The first thing the aliens learned about humans was that they could survive almost anything. The second thing they learned was far more frightening. Humans could choose mercy even when they had every reason to choose violence. On the night the human marine entered the Crystal Hall of Vaer, every alien noble in the Empire expected him to choose a beautiful princess. They were wrong. The hall had been built to make lesser beings feel small. Its ceiling disappeared into darkness high above, hidden behind layers of silver mist and floating crystal. Towers of blue mineral rose from the polished floor, glowing with cold light. Ancient pillars covered in golden symbols stood between enormous windows that looked out over the black sky of the imperial capital. Hundreds of aliens watched from the balconies. Some had horns, some had feathers, some had armored skin. Others looked almost human until the light caught their strange eyes or their sharpened teeth. All of them had come for the same reason. They wanted to see what the human would do. The human stood alone at the center of the hall. His armor was scratched, burned, and patched in several places. It was not ceremonial armor. It was combat armor, built for one purpose only: keeping a soldier alive in places where survival should have been impossible. The dark metal plates covered his chest and shoulders. A battered marine insignia remained visible near his collar. A compact rifle rested against his back, though he had been ordered to leave his weapons unloaded inside the palace. He had obeyed. That alone had surprised the royal guards. The humans had come from a world called Earth. To the galaxy, Earth was known as a death world. Not because it had poisonous oceans or skies filled with acid. It was considered a death world because almost everything on it had evolved to kill something else. The predators were fast. The parasites were patient. The weather could turn against a traveler without warning. The oceans hid creatures larger than military transports. Even the smallest insects could carry toxins capable of dropping an armored soldier. And somehow, humans had not only survived there, they had built cities. They had crossed oceans, they had climbed mountains, they had reached the stars. The Empire had studied humanity for decades, but its scientists still could not understand the species. Humans were physically weaker than many military races. They were not the fastest. They did not possess natural claws, venom, psychic abilities, or armored skin. Yet human soldiers had earned a reputation across the frontier. They kept moving after other species stopped. They fought when retreat seemed impossible. They carried wounded companions through conditions that should have killed them. Most disturbing of all, they adapted. Give a human enough time, and the human would learn how to survive. The Empire had once believed that made humans useful. Then the war began. Now the Empire knew better. The human marine standing in the Crystal Hall was not there as a prisoner. He was there as a symbol. 3 months earlier, his fleet had arrived at the edge of Imperial space after a border conflict between human colonies and an alien military alliance. The fighting had nearly destroyed both sides. But instead of continuing the war, the human government had offered a strange proposal: peace through alliance. The Imperial Court had accepted. There was only one condition. The human marine would be given the right to choose a royal bride from among the Emperor's daughters. The decision had been presented as an honor. Everyone in the Empire knew it was something else. It was a test. If the human chose one of the powerful princesses, the marriage would create a political alliance. If he chose poorly, the Empire would gain leverage over humanity. And if he refused, the Imperial Court would claim that humans had rejected peace. The human had been told the choice was entirely his. He had spent almost 10 minutes looking at the princesses. That was when the whispering began. The first princess stood beneath a silver archway. She was tall, elegant, and covered in ceremonial armor made from polished white metal. Her family controlled 3 major star systems and commanded one of the Empire's largest fleets. The second princess possessed golden eyes and a crown of living crystal. The third was famous throughout the Empire for her beauty and political influence. The fourth had defeated an entire rebel army before she turned 20. Every princess had been carefully prepared for the ceremony. Every princess expected to be chosen, except one. She stood at the far end of the hall, alone. Her name was Princess Vela. She wore dark green armor that followed the shape of her body like overlapping scales. Long silver-white hair fell over one shoulder. Thin metallic markings curved from her temple toward her pointed ears. Her eyes remained fixed on the floor. She did not look like the other princesses. She had no jeweled crown. No royal attendants, no smiling advisors, no family members standing proudly behind her. She looked as though she wanted to disappear. The imperial court had given her another name. The Broken Princess. Nobody said it loudly when the emperor was present, but everyone knew it. Vela had been born different. Her body had been exposed to a genetic anomaly inherited from an ancient bloodline. Her muscles were stronger than those of most members of her species, but her nervous system sometimes reacted unpredictably under stress. She had been trained as a warrior because the royal family feared what she might become if left powerless. Then, during her first military campaign, something had gone wrong. She had survived. Her soldiers had not. That was all the Empire remembered. It did not remember that she had carried 3 wounded soldiers across a battlefield while enemy fire burned around her. It did not remember that she had stayed behind when everyone else retreated. It remembered only that she had returned alone. From that day forward, the court mocked her. They called her cursed. They called her defective. They said no royal house would ever accept her. The emperor had not even intended for her to stand in the hall that night. But Vela had been summoned because the human marine had specifically asked to see every princess. Nobody understood why. The marine slowly turned his head. His eyes moved across the royal family, then they stopped. On Vela, the whispers disappeared. For several seconds, the entire hall became silent. Vela finally raised her eyes. She looked at the human. There was no hope in her expression. There was no expectation, only caution. She had learned long ago that when powerful people looked at her, they were usually deciding how to use her. The human marine took one step toward her. A noble laughed quietly. Another whispered something to the alien standing beside him. The sound spread. Vela's jaw tightened. She expected the human to stop. Instead, he kept walking. His boots struck the crystal floor with slow, heavy sounds. Step, step, step. Every eye followed him. The emperor leaned forward on his throne. The royal guards shifted their hands toward their weapons. The princesses stared in disbelief. The human stopped several feet from Vela. He studied her armor, then her face, then the scars running along the side of her neck. He did not look disgusted. He did not look afraid. He simply asked, "Are those from battle?" Vela hesitated. "Yes, how many battles?" She looked away. "Enough," the human nodded. Then he asked the question that changed everything. "Did you leave your soldiers behind?" A strange expression crossed Vela's face. "No," the human's eyes hardened. "Then I understand." Nobody in the hall understood what he meant. The emperor stood. "Marine, you were given the freedom to choose any princess of the imperial house. I know. Your choice will affect the future of both our civilizations. I know that too. Then choose carefully." The human looked around the hall. For the first time, a faint smile appeared on his face. "I already did." He turned toward Vela. The princess froze. The entire court froze with her. The human marine extended his hand. "I choose her." The reaction was immediate. Gasps erupted from every balcony. Several nobles shouted. One princess stepped backward as though she had been struck. The emperor stared at the human in disbelief. Vela did not move. Her eyes remained fixed on the human's outstretched hand. "You do not know what you are choosing," she whispered. The marine answered quietly. "I know exactly what I am choosing. You know what they call me?" "Yes." "You know what happened to my soldiers?" "Yes. You know I am not the strongest princess here. I know. I am not the most beautiful. I noticed." A few nobles laughed. The human did not. He looked directly into her eyes. "But you stayed." Vela's expression changed. For the first time in years, someone had said those words without hatred. "You stayed when everyone else ran," the marine continued. "Where I come from, that matters." The hall fell silent again. The emperor's face became cold. "You are making a political mistake." The human marine looked toward him. "No, your majesty. I am making a human decision." The emperor's fingers tightened around the arms of his throne. Before he could answer, a deep alarm sounded throughout the palace. The crystal walls flashed red, the floor shook. Every alien in the hall looked upward. A voice echoed through the palace. Unidentified vessels entering the outer defense zone. Another alarm followed. Then another. The Emperor's guards rushed toward the windows. The human marine did not move. Instead, he looked at Vela. She looked toward the ceiling. Her expression had changed completely. "What is it?" he asked. Vela whispered, "They found us." "Who?" She looked at him. "The things that live beyond the Empire." The marine's hand slowly moved toward the weapon on his back. The royal guards noticed. Their weapons came up immediately. Vela stepped between them. "Do not." The guards hesitated. She looked at the human. "You need to leave this palace." He shook his head. "Why?" "Because what is coming cannot be stopped by the Imperial Guard." The marine glanced toward the trembling windows. "How many ships?" Vela's voice dropped. "Too many." The palace shook again. Far beyond the crystal towers, the stars began disappearing, not one by one, thousands at a time. Something enormous was moving between them. The Empire had spent centuries fearing invasion from neighboring civilizations. It had built fleets capable of destroying moons. It had created weapons that could split planetary shields. It believed itself prepared for any enemy, but the darkness approaching there was not an empire. It was not a fleet, it was a migration. A living army from the deepest regions of space, and according to every ancient record, nothing had ever survived an encounter with it. The human marine watched the darkness spread across the sky. Then he looked back at the princes everyone mocked. Vela was already reaching for a weapon. The human smiled faintly. "Looks like our wedding plans are going to have to wait." For the first time, Vela almost smiled. Then the largest crystal window in the palace exploded inward. Something screamed outside. Not an alien, not a machine, something older. Something that had crossed the stars long before humans ever reached space. The human marine raised his weapon. Vela stood beside him. Every noble in the hall began running, but the two of them stayed. Because the Empire had just made one terrible mistake. It had spent years mocking the princes who survived the impossible, and it had invited a human death world marine to stand beside her. Neither of them knew yet that the creature approaching the palace was not there to conquer the Empire. It was there because it had been hunting Vela for 17 years, and now it had finally found her. The creature outside the palace vanished into the storm of broken crystal, leaving silence behind for half a heartbeat. Then the palace alarms became deafening. Red lights swept across the crystal hall. Royal guards shouted orders. Noble families pushed toward the exits, abandoning all dignity as they tried to reach the protected tunnels beneath the palace. The human marine remained where he was. Vela stood beside him, her weapon drawn. "You should run," she said. The marine looked at her. "That advice seems to be popular around here." "I am serious." "So am I." Another impact struck the palace. The floor moved beneath their boots. Several guards fell. The human marine caught the edge of a golden pillar and stayed upright. Vela did not even stumble. That caught his attention. He had already suspected that the stories about her were incomplete. Now he was certain. "You said this thing has been hunting you for 17 years, he said. Vela looked toward the shattered window. "I said it found me." "Those are different things." Her eyes narrowed. "You notice too much. That's how humans stay alive." She almost smiled again, but the expression disappeared quickly. The human marine had heard stories about alien civilizations before he ever left Earth. Most had described humanity as a strange species. The aliens had advanced technology. Humans had stubbornness. They had faster-than-light engines, planetary shields, genetic engineering, artificial intelligence, and weapons capable of altering the environment of entire worlds. Humans had duct tape, emergency rations, and an uncomfortable habit of surviving situations that should have killed them. That reputation had begun on Earth. Earth was not the most dangerous planet in the galaxy by every scientific measurement. It did not need to be. The problem was variety. On some death worlds, a single predator could kill a human. On Earth, a human could encounter hundreds of different dangers before reaching breakfast: heat, cold, floods, fires, storms, disease, venomous animals, toxic plants. Ocean predators, mountain predators, and other humans? Humanity had evolved under pressure from all of them. That was why human Marines trained differently. They were not taught to expect a safe environment. They were taught to expect the environment itself to become an enemy. The Marine looked around the palace. The crystal walls were beautiful. They were also fragile. The golden pillars were impressive. They were also structural hazards. The red emergency lights were bright. They were also attracting attention to everyone inside. His mind began measuring exits. 3 main doors, 2 service corridors, 1 emergency lift, the shattered window. Possible tunnel beneath the throne platform. He had learned the habit on Earth. Always know where you can run. Always know where you can hide. And always know what you can use as a weapon when the weapons stop working. Vela watched him studying the room. What are you doing? Surviving. We have military defenses. They are outside. Our palace guard is trained. They are frightened. Her expression hardened. You insult my soldiers. No. He pointed toward a group of guards near the eastern entrance. I am observing them. The guards were looking toward the ceiling. Their hands were shaking. The human Marine continued. Fear is not weakness. Pretending you are not afraid is weakness? Vela studied him for a moment. You speak strangely. I come from a strange planet. The palace shook again. This time the impact was followed by a deep vibration. Something was moving beneath the floor. The guards froze. Vela's face changed. That is impossible. What? They cannot enter the palace from below. The Marine crouched and placed one hand against the floor. He felt the vibration. Slow, heavy, rhythmic, not an explosion, movement. He stood. How deep are the palace foundations? Almost 200 meters. Then we have a problem. Vela looked at him. Why? Because whatever is underneath us is already inside. The lights went out. Darkness swallowed the hall. For several seconds, nobody moved. Then the emergency lights returned. Half the royal guards were gone, not dead, just missing. The eastern entrance stood open. The human Marine raised his weapon. Where did they go? Vela shook her head. I do not know. That answer frightened her more than anything else. She had fought enemies before. She understood weapons. She understood soldiers. She understood fear. But she did not understand an enemy that could enter a heavily protected palace without triggering a single sensor. The Marine looked at the walls. Your sensors are based on movement? Movement, heat, energy, biological signals. Then they are looking for the wrong thing. Vela stared at him. What do you mean? Maybe it does not move like a living thing. A distant metallic sound echoed through the corridor. Clang. Then silence. Clang. Closer. Vela tightened her grip. The Marine raised one finger. They waited. Clang. A shadow appeared at the end of the corridor. The palace guards lifted their weapons. Then the shadow collapsed. A damaged security drone rolled into the hall. Several guards lowered their weapons. The human Marine did not. He watched the drone. Do not touch it. One guard stepped forward. The Marine shouted, Stop! The guard froze. The drone's damaged shell opened. A cloud of tiny silver particles spilled across the floor. They moved like insects. Vela stepped backward. What are those? The Marine's expression became serious. Nanomachines. The particles suddenly changed direction. They rushed toward the nearest heat source. The guards fired. Blue energy filled the corridor. The particles scattered, then regrouped. The Marine stared. They adapt? Vela looked at him. To our weapons? Yes. How quickly? He watched the particles begin changing shape. Too quickly. He grabbed Vela's arm. Move. They ran. Behind them, the silver swarm crossed the corridor. The guards followed. The human Marine noticed something strange. The swarm was not attacking randomly. It was searching. Every time it reached the doorway, it paused. Every time it detected a biological signal, it changed direction. Then it ignored the guards. It went straight toward Vela. The Marine stopped. Vela nearly collided with him. Why did you stop? He pointed behind them. The silver particles had stopped too. They were facing her. Vela's face went pale. They found me. Why? I told you. You told me they were hunting you. I do not know why. The Marine stared at her. Then somebody does. Vela looked away. For years, she had kept the truth hidden. The royal family knew only part of it. The military knew less. The empire knew almost nothing. But the human had noticed something the others had missed. Vela was not afraid of the creatures. She was afraid of what they might reveal. "You should never have chosen me," she whispered. The Marine lowered his weapon. "Too late. You do not understand." "Then explain." She remained silent. He waited. Finally she spoke. 17 years ago, I was sent beyond the northern colonies with a research fleet. The Marine listened. We discovered a world that was not on any imperial map. A hidden planet? Not exactly. What was it? Vela looked toward the dark corridor. A dead world, the Marine frowned. Dead? No atmosphere, no oceans, no vegetation. No animal life? Nothing? Then why were you there? Because something was transmitting a signal from beneath its surface. The Marine's expression changed. What kind of signal? One we believed was artificial. The human Marine looked at the walls. Ancient technology. We thought so. And you opened it. Vela's silence answered him. She continued. Under the surface, we found structures older than our civilization. Older than any civilization in the Empire. What happened? We entered one. Her voice became quieter. Something inside woke up. The Marine waited. Was it the swarm? No. What was it? Vela looked directly at him. It was a prison. The Marine felt the weight of those words. Prison for what? Vela's eyes moved toward the ceiling. For something that should never have been found. A distant roar passed through the palace. The silver particles suddenly retreated. Vela looked confused. The Marine noticed it immediately. They are leaving. Why? He looked at the floor. They found what they wanted. What? He pointed toward her. No, Vela shook her head. They are not after me. The Marine studied her. Then what? Vela slowly touched the strange markings near her temple. My blood. The Marine said nothing. She continued. The thing beneath that dead world did not escape by force. What did it do? It changed us. The human Marine's expression hardened. Your expedition, Vela nodded. It altered every survivor. How many? 7. Where are they now? Vela looked toward the royal palace. 6 are dead. The Marine stared at her. And the 7th? Vela's eyes filled with something he had not seen before. Fear. It is the Emperor. At that exact moment, every screen in the palace turned black. Then a single symbol appeared. The same symbol carved into Vela's armor. The same symbol the ancient prison had carried. The Marine looked at her. Vela whispered one sentence. The Emperor has awakened. The symbol on every screen remained motionless, a black circle surrounded by 7 thin lines. Vela stared at it as though she had seen a ghost. The human Marine watched her. Instead, he had learned something important during years of combat. The moment a person stopped watching the enemy and started watching someone beside them, there was usually a reason. That symbol, he said. What does it mean? Vela swallowed. It means the prison is open. Across the crystal hall, the remaining guards began backing away from the screens. Some recognized the symbol, others did not. The difference was easy to see. The ones who recognized it were terrified. The others were confused. The human Marine noticed another detail. None of the guards were looking at the Emperor's throne. They were looking at the doors. They were preparing to run. That told him more than any explanation could. How long? He asked. Vela looked at him. How long until what? Until your Emperor stops being your Emperor? She did not answer. The palace lights flickered. Then a voice came through the speakers. It belonged to the Emperor. All military units are ordered to remain at their positions. The situation is under control. The human Marine almost laughed. He had heard those words before, on Earth. Commanders used them whenever the situation was absolutely not under control. He turned toward Vela. Where is he? The throne chamber. Then we go there. No. The answer came from one of the alien guards. The guard stepped forward, weapon raised. You are a foreign soldier. You have no authority here. The Marine looked at the weapon, then at the guard. You're right. The guard hesitated. But I am the only person in this building who has survived 3 planetary evacuations, 2 atmospheric failures, and a crash on a Death World moon. He looked toward the dark corridor. So if you want to stay here and wait for whatever is coming, that is your choice." The guard lowered his weapon slightly. Vela looked at the Marine. "You are impossible." Humans get that a lot. They moved through the palace. The deeper they went, the stranger the environment became. The Crystal Palace had been designed for beauty, not survival. Its corridors were wide, its ceilings high, and its walls covered with delicate decorations, but the emergency systems were beginning to fail. Doors opened and closed without warning. Gravity fluctuated. Some corridors became freezing cold, while others grew dangerously hot. The human Marine adapted immediately. He loosened his armor seals when the temperature dropped. He tightened them when the air became too warm. He checked the floor before stepping forward. Vela noticed. "You test every surface." "Yes." "Why?" "Because on Earth, the ground can kill you." She stared at him. "The ground?" "Sinkholes, quicksand, unstable ice, poisonous plants. Venomous animals. You come from a nightmare." The Marine looked at her. "That is what your scientists said." They reached a broken section of the palace. The corridor ahead had collapsed. A deep shaft separated them from the other side. Vela looked down. "I can jump it." The Marine measured the distance. "Too far. I have made longer jumps." "Not wearing that armor." She frowned. "What would you suggest?" He removed a length of emergency cable from his equipment. Vela stared at it. "You carry climbing rope?" "Always." "Inside a military suit?" "Humans like options." He secured the cable. They crossed one at a time. Vela reached the other side first. The Marine followed. Halfway across, the palace shook. The cable swung violently. For a moment, his boots lost contact with the wall. Vela grabbed the cable. "Hold on!" "I am." The vibration grew stronger. A crack appeared in the wall. Then something moved inside it. The Marine looked toward the crack. Two pale lights appeared. Vela froze. "Do not look at it." Too late. The lights vanished. A strange clicking sound came from inside the wall. The Marine pulled himself toward the ledge. Was that one of them? Vela shook her head. "No." "Then what was it?" "I do not know." That answer was becoming a pattern he did not like. They reached the other side. Behind them, the crack widened. Something moved through the wall, but instead of following them, it disappeared into the darkness below. The Marine stared after it. "It is not hunting us." Vela looked at him. "How do you know?" "Because it had the chance." He checked his weapon. "It is going somewhere." "Where?" He looked toward the throne chamber. "I think we are about to find out." Far above them, alien observers watched from a sealed command station. The royal scientists had survived the initial chaos. They had locked themselves behind reinforced doors. On their screens, the human Marine and Vela moved through the palace. One scientist shook his head. "The human is behaving irrationally," another replied. "He has survived every obstacle so far. That does not make his behavior rational. He is adapting." The first scientist looked uncomfortable. "That is exactly what concerns me." The Empire had studied humans for decades. Their soldiers were physically unimpressive compared with several major species. But humans possessed a dangerous trait. They treated failure as information. An alien soldier trained to cross a frozen wasteland might fail once and conclude the route was impossible. A human soldier would fail once, record why, change equipment, and try again. If the second attempt failed, the human would change tactics, then try again, then change again. The scientists had once called it persistence. Later, they called it adaptability. After several encounters, the military began using another word: unpredictable. The human Marine was proving that reputation correct. He was not stronger than the palace guards. He was not faster than Vela. He did not understand the Empire's technology as well as the royal scientists. Yet he kept turning unfamiliar problems into manageable ones. The alien observers could not understand how. They did not realize that humans had been doing it since before they had cities on Earth. Survival had never required a perfect plan. It required a plan that could change. The throne chamber doors were sealed when the Marine and Vela arrived. Several royal officers stood outside. The highest-ranking officer stepped forward. "Princess, you cannot enter." Vela looked at him. "My father is inside." "That is why you cannot enter. Move." The officer shook his head. The Marine studied him. What's behind the door? His Majesty? Is he alone? The officer hesitated. That was enough. The Marine turned to Vela. Something else is in there. The officer raised his weapon. Human, step away. The Marine did not. Instead, he looked at the door. There were no sounds. No movement. No alarms. Nothing. That was worse than noise. Silence meant the enemy did not need to rush. The Marine removed a small sensor from his belt and placed it against the door. The device activated. A pattern appeared. Vela looked at the display. What does it show? Temperature. That is all? No. He turned the screen toward her. The entire throne chamber was cold, almost freezing, except for one location. The Emperor's throne. It was extremely hot. Vela's face went pale. He is alive. Yes. But why is the throne so hot? The Marine looked at the symbol on the display. Because something is powering itself through him. The officer stepped backward. No. Vela looked at him. You knew. The officer said nothing. You knew this could happen. He finally lowered his weapon. The Emperor ordered us to keep it secret. How long? 6 years. Vela stared at him. You watched him change. We believed he could control it. Could he? The officer looked toward the sealed doors. No. The palace shook again. This time. The doors opened. Not because someone unlocked them. They simply moved. Slowly. Silently. Cold air poured into the corridor. The throne chamber was dark. The Emperor sat on his throne. At first glance, he looked normal. His robes were perfect. His crown remained in place. His hands rested on the armrests. But the human Marine noticed something. The Emperor was not breathing. Vela took one step forward. Father? The Emperor's eyes opened. They were no longer the same. Color, a strange silver light filled them. Vela? His voice was calm, almost gentle. She stopped. The human Marine moved in front of her. The Emperor smiled. You chose well. The Marine tightened his grip on his weapon. You know who I am. I know what you are. The Emperor stood. The room seemed to grow smaller. You come from a death world. The Marine said nothing. You survived a planet that should have killed your ancestors. The Emperor's smile widened. You adapted to it. Vela whispered. What do you want? The Emperor looked at her. Not what I want. His gaze shifted to the human. What they want. The palace trembled. Deep beneath there. Something answered. The ancient symbol appeared across the floor. One line. Then another, then a third. Vela realized what was happening. The prison. The Emperor raised one hand. It was never a prison. The Marine looked at him. Then what was it? The Emperor's silver eyes turned toward the ceiling. A nest. The entire palace went silent. Then something enormous moved beneath the city. The Emperor smiled. And your world, human, has finally been noticed. The Marine looked at Vela. She looked back. Neither knew what would happen next, but far beyond the palace, beyond the atmosphere of Ver, thousands of dark vessels began changing course. They were no longer heading toward the Empire. They were heading toward Earth. The words seemed impossible. They were heading toward Earth. The human Marine stared at the Emperor. For the first time since entering the palace, he felt something colder than fear. He felt responsibility. Earth was millions of kilometers away, but suddenly it felt closer than the floor beneath his boots. Vela looked toward the dark windows. How many ships? The Emperor did not answer. The human Marine stepped forward. How many? The Emperor's silver eyes settled on him. Enough. That single word changed the room. Vela turned toward the officers. Contact the Imperial Fleet. We already tried. Again, they are not responding. Then contact the outer colonies. They are under attack. She stopped. How many? The officer looked down. 37 systems have gone dark. The human Marine closed his eyes for a moment. 37 systems. That was not an invasion. It was preparation. The enemy was cutting communication routes, isolating fleets, and forcing the Empire into confusion before striking the main target. Earth. He opened his eyes. How long until they reach human space? The officer hesitated. We do not know. The Marine looked at the Emperor. You do. The Emperor smiled. 3 days. Vela's face went pale. The Marine immediately began calculating. 3 days was not enough to prepare a fleet. It was not enough to warn every colony. It was barely enough to send a warning through Conventional communication channels, but humans had survived worse. They had survived wars where entire cities disappeared overnight. They had survived failed colonies. They had survived planets that tried to kill them. The difference was that this time, they knew the enemy was coming. That mattered. The Marine turned toward Vela. Where is your communication center? The Western Tower. Can it reach human space? Under normal conditions. Then we make the conditions abnormal. She stared at him. What does that mean? It means we stop asking your systems to work normally. The Marine started walking. Vela followed. Behind them, the Emperor remained on the throne. His silver eyes watched them disappear, but he did not stop them. That frightened Vela more than anything. The Western Tower was already under attack when they reached it. The palace guards had barricaded the main entrance. Strange silver particles crawled across the walls. The human Marine looked at them. Do not fire. A guard stared at him. Why? Because they want us to. The guard looked confused. The Marine pointed toward the ceiling. The particles were spreading toward the ventilation system. If you destroy them here, they will scatter. Vela understood. They are hurting us. Exactly. The Marine searched the corridor. Where is your old maintenance system? Vela frowned. Maintenance? Every building has something engineers forget to remove. She pointed toward a narrow service passage. That way. They entered. The passage was cramped and dark. Vela had to turn sideways to fit through several sections. The Marine moved easily. This palace was not designed for humans. No. Your architects assumed everyone had the same body, shape. Most imperial species are taller. Your architects would hate Earth. Why? Because humans build doors differently. She almost laughed. It was a tiny sound, but it mattered. The palace was collapsing around them. The empire was under attack. Something ancient was awakening. And yet for 1 second, the princes everyone mocked remembered what it felt like to laugh. Then the wall behind them exploded inward. Vela turned. The silver swarm poured into the passage. The Marine grabbed her hand. Run! They sprinted through the maintenance tunnel. The swarm followed. The passage became narrower. The Marine saw a pressure hatch ahead. He slammed his shoulder against it. It did not move. Locked. Vela raised her weapon. I can cut it. Too slow. He looked around. Then he pulled a small charge from his equipment. Vela stared. You carry explosives? Emergency equipment. Of course. He placed the charge. Back. The hatch opened violently. They rushed through. The Marine rolled across the floor. Vela landed beside him. Behind them, the tunnel collapsed. The swarm disappeared beneath the rubble. For several seconds they heard nothing. Then the Marine stood. Still alive? Vela checked herself. Yes. Good. She looked at him. How do humans survive like this? He shrugged. We complain later. They reached the communications chamber. It was enormous. Hundreds of alien technicians worked around a central holographic display. The moment they saw Vela, they stood. Princess, prepare an emergency transmission to Earth. One technician hesitated. Earth? Yes. Why? Vela looked at the human Marine. Because they are coming. The room became silent. The technician looked toward the Marine. The Death World? The Marine nodded. The alien technician looked uncertain. Why would they attack Earth? They are not attacking Earth because of humanity, Vela answered. They are going there because of what is inside our blood. The technician stared at her. Then his face changed. You mean the expedition? Vela nodded. The human Marine looked at her. You never told me that your expedition's survivors were genetically altered. We did not know what had been changed. The technician stepped closer. My grandfather was one of the scientists who studied your expedition. Vela turned. What did he discover? He believed your blood carried a dormant genetic pattern. The Marine's expression hardened. Pattern for what? The technician looked toward the central display. Adaptation. The room fell silent. The technician continued. Your bodies were altered to recognize environmental threats faster. Your nervous systems became more responsive. Your cells learned to repair certain forms of damage. Vela stared at her hands. I thought I was sick. You were never sick. The Marine suddenly understood. The strange strength. The Resilience. The creatures tracking her, the Emperor's transformation, the hidden world, the ancient prison. It was all connected. He looked at Vela. You are not their target because you escaped. She looked back. Then why? Because you are proof. Proof of what? The Marine answered before the technician could. That the experiment worked. A warning sounded. The central display changed. Thousands of objects appeared in deep space. The room erupted into noise. The technician whispered, "They have entered the outer human sector." The Marine stared at the display. 3 days had become less than 1. He felt something inside him settle. Not fear. Purpose. He reached for the communications. Controls, send this message. The technician looked at him. What should we tell Earth? The Marine thought for a moment. Tell them the enemy is coming. That is all? No, he looked at Vela. Tell them we have their princess. Vela's eyes widened. What? The Marine continued. Tell them she has information about the enemy. The technician transmitted the message. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then the reply came. A human military signal. Simple. Clear. We hear you. The alien technician stared at the screen. The Marine smiled. Another message followed. Hold position. Then another. Human fleet mobilizing. The room changed. For the first time, the aliens saw something they had never understood about humans. Humans did not always fight because they were stronger. They fought because someone had asked them to hold the line, and when a human soldier called for help, other humans came. The display filled with new signals. Human warships entered the system. 1. Then 10. Then 50. Then hundreds. Vela stared. How? The Marine looked at her. Humans are stubborn. The alien technician whispered, Your fleet crossed that distance in hours. We have been preparing for emergencies for a long time. Why? The Marine gave him a tired look. Because Earth taught us not to assume tomorrow will be easy. Outside the tower, the sky changed. The enemy fleet had arrived. Dark shapes covered the stars. The palace shook. The communications chamber trembled. The alien technicians began evacuating. The human Marine stayed. Vela remained beside him. You should leave, she said. So should you. I cannot. Neither can I. She looked at him. Why? He looked toward the approaching darkness. Because I chose you. Her expression softened. That is not a reason to die. I did not say I planned to die. He checked his weapon. I planned to survive. The enemy fleet moved closer. A massive vessel appeared at the center of the formation. It was larger than any ship the Empire had ever built. Its surface seemed alive. Its hull changed shape as it moved. The alien technicians watched in horror. The human Marine watched. Carefully. It has a command ship. Vela looked at him. How do you know? Because every army has one. You think like them? No. He looked at the enormous vessel. I think like something that has fought them before. The ship opened. A beam of silver light struck the palace. Every screen went white. Then a voice filled the chamber. It was not the Emperor. It was not alien. It was something deeper. Something ancient. Return the surviving bloodline. Vela stepped forward. The voice continued. The experiment belongs to us. The human Marine moved between Vela and the transmission. Come, get her. Silence followed. Then the voice spoke again. Human. The Marine's eyes narrowed. You know my species. We remember your world. That sentence changed everything. Vela looked at the Marine. The human Marine stared at the screen. What did you do on Earth? The voice answered. We taught your ancestors how to survive. The Marine went still. Vela whispered, That is impossible. But the voice continued. Your death world was not an accident. The chamber fell silent. Earth was selected. The Marine felt his pulse quicken. Selected for what? The answer came slowly. Testing. Every alien in the room stared at the human. For generations, humans had believed they had evolved on a hostile planet by chance. Now an ancient enemy was claiming otherwise. The voice spoke again. We created the conditions. The Marine looked at Via then at the approaching fleet. Something inside him hardened. If Earth had been a test, then humanity had spent its entire history becoming something its creators never expected. The human Marine raised his weapon. Then you made one mistake. The voice asked, What mistake? He looked around at the terrified aliens, then at then at the stars. You thought we were still being tested. The transmission ended. For one long moment, nobody spoke. Then the human fleet entered firing range. The sky erupted with light. Vela looked at the Marine. Is this your plan? He shook his head. No. Then what is our plan? The Marine looked toward the enemy fleet. Survive the first wave. And after that? He smiled. Then we teach them what Earth taught us. Before she could ask what he meant, every human warship changed formation. The aliens watched in astonishment. The fleet did not retreat. It did not surround the palace. It moved directly toward the enemy, straight into the darkness. The human Marine looked at Vela. Stay behind me. She raised her weapon. No, he looked at her. I've spent 17 years being protected by people who were afraid of me. She stepped beside him. Tonight, I fight beside the first person who was not. The palace doors opened. Beyond them waited the impossible. A dying empire. An ancient enemy. A fleet from a death-world. And two people who had no reason to trust each other, except one simple choice. He had chosen her. Now they would have to survive what that choice had awakened. The first human warship struck the enemy formation like a hammer. The impact did not destroy the massive alien vessel. It did something more important. It made the enemy move. Across the battlefield, hundreds of human ships changed direction at once. They did not follow a perfect formation. They spread apart, regrouped, and attacked from different angles. The Imperial fleet had never seen anything like it. Alien commanders expected armies to obey predictable patterns. Humans did not. They adapted. A human cruiser took heavy damage and lost half its engines. Instead of retreating, its captain redirected power to the remaining engines and turned the damaged ship into a shield for 3 smaller vessels. Another human ship lost communications. Its crew continued the attack using visual signals. A third ship lost navigation. Its pilots followed the stars. The alien observers watched in disbelief. Why are they still advancing? One asked. An Imperial commander answered quietly. Because they believe they can survive. That was only part of the truth. The humans did not believe they were invincible. They simply refused to assume that survival was impossible. The enemy fleet launched another wave. Silver vessels swept across the battlefield. Human ships scattered. The alien attack missed its primary targets. Then the humans returned. The battle became a storm of light. Vela stood inside the communications tower and watched the display. She had spent her entire life being told that humans were primitive compared with the Empire. Now, she understood the mistake. The Empire had measured strength by weapons. Humans measured strength by what happened after the weapons failed. The human Marine stood beside her. His armor was damaged. One shoulder plate was missing. Blood marked his sleeve, but he was still standing. You are injured, Vela said. Nothing serious. You are bleeding. Humans do that sometimes. She looked at him. That is not reassuring. It was not meant to be. A warning flashed across the screen. The enemy command vessel was moving toward the planet? Vela's expression hardened. They are bypassing the fleet. The Marine nodded. They want the palace. No. He looked at her. They want you. She shook her head. They want my blood. The Marine studied the approaching vessel. Then we give them something else. Vela frowned. What? He pointed toward the ancient symbol appearing across the palace systems. Your empire has been studying that symbol for years. Yes. Did anyone ever try to understand it? Our scientists tried. No, he shook his head. They tried to control it. Vela stared at him. There was a difference, a very human difference. Humans had survived Earth by learning how things worked. They did not always defeat nature. Sometimes they understood it well enough to live beside it. The Marine looked at the symbol. Your ancestors thought the creatures created Earth. Vela nodded. They said they shaped your planet into a death world, maybe. He paused. But they did not understand what they created. Vela's eyes widened. You think Earth changed humanity beyond their plans? Exactly. The ancient creatures had designed a world meant to test adaptation, but they had misunderstood one thing. Humans did not merely adapt to threats, they adapted to each other, they formed communities, they protected the weak. They taught children what they had learned, they recorded every failure, they shared knowledge, every generation became better prepared than the last. The creatures had created a test. Humanity had turned it into a civilization. The enemy command vessel entered the atmosphere. The palace shook. Vela looked at the Marine. What do we do now? He smiled. Show them Earth. She did not understand. Then the human fleet changed formation. The surviving warships moved away from the palace. The enemy followed. Vela stared at the display. They are pulling the enemy away. Yes. Why? Because the palace is the trap. She turned toward him. What trap? The Marine pointed toward the ancient chamber beneath the palace. That prison. Vela suddenly understood. The creatures want to open it. Then let them. Her eyes widened. You cannot be serious. Very. The prison contains something dangerous. Exactly. That is your plan? No. He looked at her. That is their plan. The difference became clear. The ancient enemy believed the prison belonged to them. They believed the Empire was too frightened to challenge them. They believed Vela was simply a genetic key. But the human Marine had realized something else. The prison responded to her. The symbol had appeared when she was near it. The ancient system recognized her. Blood. If she could activate it, perhaps she could also control it. Vela walked toward the chamber. The Marine followed. You do not know what will happen. Neither do you. No. She looked at him. That should bother you. It does. She smiled faintly. Good. They entered the ancient chamber. The walls were covered with symbols older than the Empire. At the center stood a circular platform. Vela stepped onto it. The chamber came alive. Silver light moved through the walls. The human Marine felt his armor systems begin to malfunction. He removed his helmet. That is not good. Vela looked at him. What? My equipment is shutting down. Leave. He shook his head. No. Why? He looked at the platform. Because you chose to stay when everyone else ran. Vela looked down. For the first time, she understood that the human's choice had never been about beauty. It had never been about politics. It had never been about pity. He had recognized something in her. The same thing humans had carried since the beginning. The refusal to abandon someone simply because survival would be easier without them. The chamber shook. A voice filled the room. Genetic carrier identified. Vela looked upward. The voice continued. Return to origin. She answered, no. The chamber went silent. The human Marine looked at her. Vela raised her head. You made us suffer for 17 years. Her voice strengthened. You made my people fear us. The symbols brightened. You called us experiments. The chamber trembled. You were wrong. The human Marine stepped beside her. Vela looked at him. Then she placed her hand against the central symbol. I am not your experiment. The entire chamber erupted with light across the battlefield. Every alien vessel suddenly stopped. The enemy ships lost control. Their formations broke apart. The silver fleet became motionless. The human commanders stared at their displays. What happened? A signal spread across every communication channel. Not from the humans. Not from the Empire. From the ancient network. A single message repeated throughout the system. Experiment terminated. The enemy command vessel began collapsing. Its living hull turned pale. The ancient fleet started shutting down, one by one. Thousands of ships became silent. The Emperor's silver eyes lost their unnatural glow. He fell to his knees inside the throne chamber. The alien guards rushed toward him. The Emperor looked at his hands. I remember. A guard approached carefully. Your Majesty? The Emperor looked up. I remember Earth. The guard froze. The Emperor's voice became weak. We thought we were creating survivors? He looked toward the distant stars. We created something else. Back inside the ancient chamber, Vela collapsed. The human Marine caught her before she hit the floor. Stay with me. She opened her eyes. I am tired. You can rest. She looked at him. Did we win? He looked toward the fading light. We survived. Vela smiled. That sounds like a human answer. It is. When the battle finally ended, the galaxy was changed. The Empire's surviving leaders discovered the truth. About the ancient experiments. Earth had not been randomly selected as a death-world. It had been deliberately altered long before. Recorded human history. The ancient civilization had wanted to create the ultimate survivors. They had introduced environmental pressures. They had manipulated ecosystems. They had watched humanity develop. But the experiment had failed in a way the creators never expected. They had underestimated cooperation. They had underestimated curiosity. They had underestimated imagination. Most of all, they had underestimated the human ability to turn suffering into knowledge. The Empire released every record. For the first time, alien civilizations learned the truth about humanity. Humans had not become strong because they were born stronger than everyone else. They became strong because they kept learning. The princes once called broken became a symbol of the new alliance. Vela refused a throne at first. Instead, she became the leader of the survivors who had been changed by the ancient experiment. She built research stations on abandoned worlds. She helped other species affected by the ancient technology. She became proof that being different did not mean being defective. The emperor survived. He surrendered his authority voluntarily. He spent the rest of his life helping uncover the secrets he had once hidden. The imperial fleet and human military formed a joint defense force, but their greatest achievement was not another weapon. It was the exchange of knowledge. Humans taught alien soldiers how to survive extreme environments. Aliens taught humans advanced medical science and faster-than-light engineering. Death-world survival techniques became part of military training across the galaxy. And Earth became something it had never been before. A place of study. Alien scientists traveled there expecting to find a terrifying world. They found oceans. Forests. Mountains. Cities. Children playing. Families gathering for meals. They saw predators. Storms. Deserts. Frozen regions. They finally understood. Earth had never been gentle, but humanity had never asked it to be. Humans had learned to live with danger. They had learned to build homes in harsh places. They had learned to cross oceans. They had learned to explore space. They had learned to survive. And when the galaxy finally faced a threat older than civilization itself, humanity did not stand alone. They stood beside the very aliens who had once mocked them. Years later, Vela stood on a balcony overlooking the human city built beside the former imperial capital. The stars were peaceful. The palace had been rebuilt. The ancient symbols had been preserved in a museum. Children from dozens of species walked through the streets together. The human marine stood beside her. His armor was still battered. He had refused to replace several pieces. Vela pointed toward the DMAGED shoulder plate. You could repair that. I could. Then why don't you? He looked at the old scar. It reminds me of the battle. He shook his head. Of the choice, Vela smiled. The choice that started all of this. Yes. She looked toward the stars. You chose the princes everyone mocked. The marine nodded. And you turned out to be trouble. She laughed. You knew that when you chose me. Maybe. She looked at him. Would you make the same choice again? The human marine looked across the city. Then at the stars. Then back at her. Every time. Vela smiled. Far above them, a new human exploration fleet prepared to leave the system. Its mission was not war. It was exploration. The galaxy had once believed humanity's greatest advantage was its ability to fight. It was wrong. Humanity's greatest strength was the ability to face an unknown world and ask one simple question. How do we survive here? Then learn. Then adapt. Then build. Then help the next person survive too. That was the lesson. Earth had taught humanity. A death world had tried to break them. It had failed. Instead, it had given them resilience. The ancient creatures had tried to turn humans into weapons. They had failed. Instead, they created explorers, soldiers, scientists, builders, parents, friends, and survivors. And the princess they had mocked became the woman who helped unite the galaxy. As the human fleet disappeared into the stars, Vela watched the last ship vanish into the darkness. Where are they going? The marine smiled. Somewhere dangerous. Of course. Humans like dangerous places. She shook her head. I still do not understand your species. He looked at the stars. Good. Why is that good? Because neither do we. He turned toward her. That is why we keep exploring. The stars waited beyond the horizon. The galaxy was still enormous. There were worlds nobody had seen. Species nobody had met. Threats nobody had imagined. But humanity was ready. Not because humans were the strongest species, not because they were invincible, and not because they had escaped the harshness of their death-world. They were ready because Earth had taught them something no ancient empire had understood. Survival was never about being impossible to defeat. It was about getting back up after the fall. It was about adapting when the plan failed. It was about standing beside someone when running would be easier. And when the universe asked humanity what made them different, the answer was simple. They were born on a death-world. They learned to survive. Then they learned to make survival mean something. That was humanity's true strength, not the weapons. Not the ships, not the armor, the human heart that refused to give up. And somewhere beyond the stars, the next unknown world waited. Humanity was already on its way.